Start saying, this is my story a la breve. And in music, a la breve means short, brevity. My story starts, my mental health story, or I'm not a psychiatric survivor, I'm a thriver. I was hospitalized in 1979 with a life-threatening illness, and I was medicated with intravenous antibiotics, and of course I was under anesthesia for a 5-hour emergency surgery. I came out of it. I was in ICU with tubes coming out of my nose, my stomach. There was a Gomco. I was in ICU for 3 or 4 days. The surgeon walks in and says, "You almost died." I said, they had to use lemon pops to moisten I couldn't speak because it was all down my throat, the tube. So I got transferred to the regular floor in a room where a woman was dying of cancer. And every day she got up from the bed and she had a great sense of humor. She was behind the curtain and she'd say, "When the moon comes over the mountain." Well, my friend and surrogate mother, Antonina, sent me some tapes of music. And every day I would sing and harmonize with these pieces of music while this woman when they got me ambulatory out of the bed and walking around, I was just singing, and I'm convinced that music healed me as well as this surgeon. Because I had like 20 minutes, he said, after 20 minutes, my mother waited in the lobby at 2 o'clock in the morning. The doors kept coming opening and closing. Huntington Hospital, Long Island, New York. She waited and waited by herself. Her friend had to leave. And when the 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was sent up to surgery, I guess about 10. By 3 o'clock, he walks out in his scrubs, Dr. Brickman, and says, "Mrs. Grimaldi, you're very lucky. We almost lost her. 10 minutes, she would have been gone." When we opened her up, peritonitis all over the abdomen. She just got in her car and drove home. She said she doesn't remember how she got home, but she did. So when I woke up in ICU, the doctor flings open the curtain, says, "You almost died." I went, "Huh? Huh?" And then my Dr. Del Toro, my good old general practitioner who originally diagnosed this thing, because I went in there with this feeling of like sickness for weeks, and I've been in Eugene visiting my brother in the Whitaker neighborhood, and had pain in my abdomen. I didn't know what it was. So my gynecologist thought, "Oh, she just has fluid retention." Well, I developed a fever. And I went to see Dr. Del Toro, our family doctor, general practitioner. He says, "I don't know what's wrong with you." So I went home, and I ran a fever again. He says, "The blood work didn't show anything. Come in the next morning." The next morning I woke up, and I went to the bathroom, blood in the toilet. My mother and I raced to his office, and he said, get to Huntington Hospital, see this Dr. Brickman, Lawrence Brickman. Hand to God, Brickman. My father was a bricklayer. There's something to this. He was very straightforward. He drew a picture on the mattress when I was up on the floor. He said, I think you have a big abscess forming from your appendix, but the gynecologist thinks you have an ovarian cyst. So we filled you up with water to get a sonogram so we could get behind what the x-ray couldn't see, and I think you have a mass. So the gynecologist is going to do the incision, the bikini cut, and lo and behold, that's what happened. He did the bikini cut, the gynecologist, and Brickman saw what he thought was actually the truth, an abscess the size of a fist with my appendix this long wound around my cecum bowel, seeping into my whole abdomen, peritonitis. So it was a 5-hour surgery, 10 minutes from death, traumatic experience. I went home after 8 days when they thought I would be there for maybe 14 days because I was listening to music the whole time and singing. They would wake you up. They come with these rickety cars in the middle of the night and say, Miss Jane, Miss Grimaldi, we have to give you your sleeping pill. I'm already asleep. So I wasn't sleeping. So hello, I was getting manic. So I went home. Well, actually what happened was my brother kept calling me from Oregon. And I was lying on my back, and one of the surgeons, the substitute surgeon, who was the cover for Dr. Brickman, this really handsome doctor, French doctor, was changing my dressing, and I was laughing, I was on my back laughing, and I said, gee, I think maybe I'm going to pull these sutures apart. And the doctor said, no, that's the best thing. I was laughing. Richard was making me, he's a funny guy. So between laughing and music and the divine, I got out of there in a short time. So when I got home, I got manic. I thought I had seen the second coming. I thought I was Christ reincarnate. I had a mystical experience. So I thought, oh boy. My mother was like, oh, what's going on? I was playing viola in the middle of the night. I was playing on the street. My mother was in bed at 2 in the morning, and I was at her house, and that. So it just reached a pitch when I put my fist through the wall because she kept saying, what's the matter with you? I said, there's nothing wrong with me. Of course, when you're manic, nothing's wrong with you. It's something else, somebody else. So the wise Dr. Del Toro, the GP that I originally went to, advised my mother for me to see this really nice psychiatrist. I went over there, and I was all over the place, sitting on his desk. And the guy said, well, you're exhibiting manic symptoms, but you never had a manic episode before. No, never, ever. My mother was there. We knew that. He said, well, I'm just going to put you on a sedative and not going to label you and just go from there. So I went home with some kind of sedative. I don't know if it was Librium or what. And I got really depressed. And then I started taking some kind of antidepressant, and I couldn't get out of bed. My very first clinical depression. And my mother was getting her house ready to sell it, to put it on the market. It was on the market. And she was working in her garden, in her flower garden in the backyard. And she said, get out of bed and come outside and dig. It was a sunny day in November, right after Thanksgiving. You know, it was sunny, it was nice, she was planting her flowers. I said, I was on the ground. She says, get up and dig, it's good therapy. So I crept up off the ground one day, and I walked into the bathroom, and I took the pills and threw the antidepressants and flushed them down the toilet, and got up and said, I'm going to San Francisco, which is where I was headed anyway, back to San Francisco, where I first exhibited those symptoms, by the way, on our way to Oregon to visit Richard, my brother. And I said, I'm going to San Francisco. My friend has an apartment in her building. And then I woke up in San Francisco, and it was bright, light. And I got over that was my very first manic episode, and I was treated very nicely. And I don't consider myself a psychiatric survivor. I don't like that term. It's kind of violent. I mean, I thrived because these people treated me so well. So that's the beginning of my story. the way, is the Sibelius Violin Concerto that I rearranged for viola. And then I'm in San Francisco, and I'm in San Francisco, and I wound up working at a hospital. And I had a very serious accident happen to my finger, my hand. I thought I would never play the viola again. I was so depressed when I moved this. I'll never be a violist again. I brought this beautiful Portuguese viola with me. It was worth a lot of money. And I was in my kitchen in my apartment, boiling coffee, looking at the want ads, because I ran out of money. I was running out of money and I needed a job. And I went to open the door to my bedroom, which had a glass doorknob. And I didn't know my own strength, and I ripped the doorknob off, and it severed a nerve in this hand. And I saw, right then and there, I said, oh my God, I'll never play the viola again now. Luckily, there was somebody in my building who took me to Mount Zion Hospital. I had my hand up like this, got to see a surgeon who was in Vietnam. He was in a MASH unit. Luckily, he was a hand surgeon. And he said, you know what? If I wasn't in the building, some meatball surgeon would have botched it up and you would have no use of this finger. So I had microsurgery and I became a violist again. But I needed to earn a living, so through contacts from my mom and having been a patient in a hospital, I had a job in a hospital for 2 years. Until I finally said, I quit, I'm a violist, I'm going to work in Marin Symphony in San Francisco. So for 10 years I played all around the Bay Area. But I started to get a little manic when I was starting to run out of money, when I quit my job. And then I got a little manic episode because I fell in love with my postman. And every time I'd be playing my viola, he'd walk by and he'd come up and for a bottle of... And then I got manic over that. I was manic because it was stress. I had no job. And I wasn't really playing viola. I was playing in the Marin Symphony, which is a part-time gig. It's like the Eugene Symphony. I think I was making more money than the Eugene Symphony. But my rent was $385, which was pretty cheap back then. You can't live in San Francisco anymore for that. So in 1984, I got out of my mother took me to a crisis stabilization overnight thing at Mount Zion, and at the hospital there one night. She saw me lighting matches. This Arabic grocer saw me lighting matches and doing weird things on the street, so she came and took me in a taxi to the hospital crisis unit, and they locked me up for an overnight, and of course I fought tooth and nail. They put me on Cogentin, and came home. My brother came down from Oregon. Anyway, I got over all that, got into therapy at Kaiser Permanente, and got back to play my viola, and I just got over it. I just continued to play in the Bay Area, rode all over the city, rode over the Golden Gate Bridge, had panic attacks in the car going over the Golden Gate Bridge, thinking I was going to sail off and pull off this. I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor, but I haven't survived. I'm not surviving the psychiatric profession. I'm surviving life. David. David Oakes, I really respect you. But this business of psychiatric survivor, what does that mean, survivor? I survived myself. I survived life. Surviving psychiatry? I wouldn't be alive if I didn't have psychiatry. And either with a lot of people. I know people who are holding groups, depression groups, who are ADD. They can't even concentrate on who they're paying attention to. There's all this crosstalk going around, and I'm like, hello, the rules are no crosstalk. You're talking to this person too long. These people are QMHAs. David. Everybody, please take note. Psychiatric surviving sounds very violent. And I'm not an activist. I just have a story to tell. And I said I'd be brief. So I think my voice is getting tired, so there's going to be a musical interlude. What a difference a day makes, 24 little hours. Brought the sun and the flowers where there used to be rain. My yesterdays were blue, dear. Today I'm part of you, dear. My lonely nights are through, dear, since you said you were mine. What a difference a day makes. There's a rainbow before me. Skies above can't be stormy. In that moment of bliss, that thrilling kiss, it's you find romance on your menu. What a difference a day made, and the difference was you. So moving right along, after we were rudely interrupted by some really good music, I wound up in, after San Francisco, I went back to New York, took care of my mother, got on welfare. Stress can cause a lot of mental illness. And then I went to Florida, where I was her sole caregiver, held a job in an orchestra, held a job at Starbucks, held a job at a supermarket, and had a great psychologist from New York, from Brooklyn, who trained at NYU and did her practicum at Bellevue. And I saw her for 7 years, and she introduced me to the book, The Four Agreements by Don Luis Miguel. And I looked at it and I didn't get it. It's sort of like the Don Juan books. And I just read it recently, and it's a book that all mental health practitioners should read. It's very simple. You make an agreement with yourself to be impeccable with your word, say what you mean, be clear, clarify, don't say things you don't mean, or if you do say things you don't mean, apologize and correct it. There's 4 agreements. I don't remember all the agreements. Read the book. It's on the bookshelves, and he's written subsequent books. So after leaving, then I left there in a crisis in 2005. I ran out of money because I was juggling orchestra. My mother died in 1999. I was juggling orchestra, Starbucks, getting my health benefits, boot camp, heroic. And then I started asking my brother, who lives here, for money. And he said, we can't do that. You're going to come here. There's services here. Meanwhile, Hurricane Katrina was barreling up the coast, and I got rid of my whole household except for this, some heirlooms in my apartment, and my music and some books. Most of my books I gave away. The Catholic Church helped me. A man came and said, we have somebody living on our porch. He could use all this stuff. And as a bonus to get my deposit back, he has a rug cleaning business. He cleaned my whole apartment and the kitchen floor, which I didn't think I could do that. But the UPS package service said, hey, we got to get this stuff out of here. Hurricane Katrina is barreling up the coast, so we got to get this stuff shipped out to Eugene. I said, all right. I was in the middle of a crisis, and I stood my ground and had equanimity. The important thing is, no matter how distressed you are, to know your feet are on the ground. And I think I'm very strong. So that's how I wound up here. And the last time I was incarcerated was when I was evicted from an apartment down the street from here, 3 blocks down, because it was a complex of, it was 4 behind a house in the back. There's a stairway going in between. Well, I was on the bottom floor, 2, 3, 4. It's like a 4 Square Investments is the name of the company that rented it to me. Anyway, it was made of paper in Italian, fatta di carta. The guy upstairs knew exactly where I was playing. If I belched or did anything or fart, the guy was like on my case. I couldn't practice. He could come running downstairs and go, Jane, you can't practice here. Why not? Because I'm home. Well, put earplugs in. No, I'm not going to use earplugs. So it got to be too much pressure. He was homosexual. He came to me in the middle of the night one time and blinked his eyes and said, "Jane, can I have your brother's phone number?" I said, "Sure, here, whatever, I don't care. Get me out of this place," I'm thinking. Just get me out of here. I don't know what he's going to do with this number. The next morning, my brother shows up. "Jane?" Trying to get in the window. He says, "Knock, knock." I said, "What's the password?" "Love." And I said, "What's going on?" "You're being evicted." "Oh, good." Now what? The cahoots came to get me. I walked right out of the building. The cahoots guy said, you want to get dressed?" "No, just take me away." I walked out in my pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. They put me in the holding tank at Sacred Heart for God knows how long. Then they shipped me to Roseburg at 3 in the morning. 12 hours, I guess I was there. And I had a vacation at the Mercy Behavioral Health, which is no longer there anymore. And I came back and I told my landlord, "Oh, I have to get out of here anyway. The mold in this rug in the basement here, apartment is bad." And they were nice. I said, "Just take your time." And then I found this place, which has a wood floor. I can play my viola. Nobody hears me. Artists live just downstairs across the hall. Everything's good. I'm a Laurel Hill participant. I even joined Lila here, peer support. I'm a thriver, David. I'm a thriver, people. I'm a psychiatric thriver. And that's my story. A la breve. So I have a music therapy practice, by the way. I studied music therapy, sound therapy, humming, toning, chakras. Music is great therapy. Anybody want lessons? Anybody want to improve their toning, their anger, their frustrations, reach deeper places within themselves? I have all the books waiting. I've used it on myself. I've used it on subjects free of charge. I'm ready to go. Music therapy. That's what keeps me sane. So I'm a thriver. A la breve.